Welcome to Daylilie Diaries. Today I am so excited to introduce our guest, Avalon Wasteneys. In our conversation, Avalon opens up about many aspects of her journey, from debunking myths in rowing, update it's not just about the arms, to her personal battles with burnout and anxiety, and even the power of a growth mindset in redefining what excellence really means. In this conversation, you'll hear about her experiences in high-performance sport, the importance of staying true to yourself, and how humor and fantasy have played a role in her life. I had a great time in this conversation. There's nothing like talking to a teammate about where their mind was at in their best moments and, when moments weren't so great. I learned a lot, even though it's the sport that I do as well, and I've been with Avalon this entire time. It's amazing what you can uncover when you just sit down for a conversation. So get ready for an insightful and inspiring discussion with Avalon, and let's dive in. Hello, hi, welcome.
Hi.
We're interviewing women such as yourself who are dominant in their sport, but more so dominant in their community, and just a great role model and example for up-and-coming athletes of any sport. Don't blush.
Don't make me blush.
Sorry. But just someone that we know girls look up to, and someone that we would like to share a little bit more about, both the fun side and also just the more serious side, because you do a lot of great media, and I think people just enjoy hearing from you and about you. So yeah, we thought it'd be awesome to get you on here, and thanks. So the first question is, for those who are listening and may or may not know, are you able to unpack what it is to be in the Canadian Women's 8 in 30 seconds?
I would say rowing in 8 means 8 rowers and a coxswain, so 9 people working together in one very long boat, and they're all rowing in sync to race at full speed, going from point A to point B over 2,000 meters. Each rower, they have one long oar to propel the boat backwards, like they're not facing the way they're going. And the coxswain steers while also like calling out commands and motivating and whatnot. And really the Canadian 8 in general is about perfect timing. It's about power. It's about coordination. Just because, the smallest mistake can really mess up the whole boat's speed. It's really like the perfect melting pot of personalities. It's a total ultimate team effort, and it takes serious practice to make it all look effortless.
So that is exactly, I think, what a person watching it for the first time would also want to know. And I think you nailed every point of importance for the women's 8. So I applaud. Well done. Especially under pressure. Okay, the next question is, what is one common stereotype about rowers that people always get wrong?
Yeah, so I get a lot of people, when I tell them I'm a rower, they're like, oh, you must have super strong arms. Yeah, I mean, they're stronger than average, but not from rowing necessarily. I'd say that the common misconception is that we use our arms instead of our legs.
The most underrated part of rowing is...
Going with like the funny side of things, I would say it's really easy to figure out what to wear.
Yeah.
Because there's like one option.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just got your Team Canada uni, and that's what you put on every day. So it really simplifies things for people who have decision fatigue like myself when they're trying to decide what to wear. I mean, in the wintertime, you have to figure out layers, but in the summertime, it's just like, you throw on your uni, you're good to go.
No, totally. Yeah, the uni in the summer is clutch. Kind of on that subject, what is one piece of gear that people wouldn't know that rowers use?
I would say a pair of sunglasses. It's totally a rare situation that I would ever launch out on the water without sunglasses, even if it's raining. And that's because they're multi-purpose, They're like to keep your hair back, and they're also great in case the sun comes out. So yeah, definitely the sunglasses.
It's a really good point, because people would see rowers and see them looking backwards and head down. But of course, with the water, you're going to need the sunglasses.
Yeah, and the water, the glare is brutal, as you know. But yeah, sunglasses, it's really important. So for me, at least.
Well, this one, I don't know off of, but you probably will. Is there a nickname of somebody on the team or a name that you've gotten that's like something that people refer to you as, or one that pops to your head?
I think this quadrennial, I would say it was provolone, as in the cheese. And that's because my boyfriend Jacob, I think when we first started dating, he would sometimes say my name with like a southern twang. So he'd be like, Avalon. And it turned into Avalon, provolone. And then some of the other girls heard it, and they started calling me provolone as well. And so now I respond to provolone, Provi, Prove. It's kind of a weird name, but that was kind of my name the last few years.
That is adorable. I had no idea. Provolone.
Yeah.
Okay, Avalon, fact or fiction? So if you wouldn't mind, could you share one truth and one lie? And then I will guess Which one is the truth and which one is the lie?
Okay, so my fact or fiction is that in high school, I competed in volleyball very competitively. And then my other one would be when I was in middle school, I performed a Sonny and Cher duet.
I know that you were a competitive cross-country skier. However, I do not believe that you were a performer in middle school. And
I was.
based off that face, you were?
Unfortunately, I was. I don't know how I got it. I have no musical or singing ability. It was probably horrible. There's no video evidence, and I have never really shared this before, so you're welcome.
That is an honor that we will carry. Thank you. And
I'm regretting this immediately.
Okay, the next one we're going to do is kind of on the same line, but what is one fun fact that you can do that you are always like, this is my thing that no one knows, and it's awesome?
Okay, I have nothing along those lines that is anyone would consider, wow, this is awesome. I really don't, but I would say that maybe one stat I have is that like I'm a very avid reader. Always have been since I was a kid. Recently flying back from Europe, I had a 10-hour flight, and before that I had several hours in the airport, and I just started reading in the airport and boarded the plane still reading on my iPad and literally read the entire flight. I didn't sleep, I didn't stop, I just read the entire time and like ate my food when it arrived, but I was just like roasting my book. And then it started being kind of like a competition where I was like, yeah, I think I should just try reading this entire flight.
You made reading a competition.
A little bit. I mean, I know there's people who do those 24-hour reading challenges, and that seems a little bit crazy to me, but yeah, 12 hours straight was, that was a lot.
What was the book, Avalon?
It was Throne of Glass, I think it was. And because I had it just like, I bought the whole series onto my Kindle, and then I had that on my iPad. And so I was reading the multiple books in a row.
I feel like that's very acceptable because I've only heard good things.
Yeah, it's a fun little adventure. It's a good book.
Okay, so now we're going to get into moments that define your journey. So we'll shift the tone a little bit and we'll get into some more kind of inspiring stuff for our listeners to hopefully learn from and maybe take something away with. The first one we're going to talk about is funding. There's a misconception that athletes are well paid, when in reality, you and I both know that pursuing sports at the highest level is very expensive, and in niche sports like rowing, funding is super scarce. So when there's an injury or anything happens to your body, you need physio, you need RMT, rehab, whatever else, on top of all the other costs that come with training. It just adds up so much. So you're a big advocate for programs like RBC and Can Fund, and we just want to know what's the behind the scenes of an athlete's life when you're navigating these financial challenges.
Yeah, like you said, it's something the public hasn't really always realized, that sport is really only glamorous for a very select few. And for most Olympic-focused athletes like ourselves, that pursuit isn't actually just physically tough because of training. It's also extremely tough because it's really expensive. You're away from your friends and your family and your loved ones. You don't get paid vacation days. Like, that's just a funny little thing. You can't just go off for a wedding and plan that. You're on a very strict regime. You're often away or too busy or too exhausted to work or develop a career or go to school. But I think the fact that we can't prepare for our future or really necessarily take the time to get additional income means that for a lot of us athletes, we're super dependent on sponsors or grants or loopholes or family support. If you're someone who can get family support, I can only really speak for myself. But for me, it was always important to look for opportunities to fund my journey. I started rowing in university and I was paying my own way through university. So I was taking out student loans and I was new to the sport of rowing. And luckily for me, RBC kind of found me, or I found them, I don't know. At that time, that was like really, really critical support that I needed because I was working 2 part-time jobs. I was going to school full time. I was rowing. I was on student loans, and it was a lot. And I think that for a lot of athletes who are on that cusp of making a team or being able to get enough sponsors or funding through grants, like that's that critical time period where people kind of fall through the cracks. And so for myself, I was really lucky that I had a company like RBC who was looking to support future Olympians. That took a huge weight off my shoulders. And I remember just being so grateful. And then the same for Can Fund. I remember the first time I got it, I don't know about you, but I cried because I was just like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to be able to turn the heating on like in the wintertime. That's so wonderful. So yeah, I remember that was a really big deal. I think it's kind of an interesting topic because for athletes in Canada, we're looked to as these role models or as inspiration. And, we're highly experienced professionals, the best at our job. And we represent our countries on the world stage, and yet we're often paid barely enough to live on. So at the end of the day, I think that competing simply for, that intrinsic desire that we all have, it shouldn't have to just be that. I think we should also be able to get some kind of support or incentive as well.
Oh, absolutely. That was so well put. Yeah. I had no idea you were working 2 full-time jobs and at school and rowing. And if anyone who's listening has ever even tried rowing, that's near impossible. So yeah, it's great you could find RBC and you were able to get that help, and crying to turn on the heat is not something that I think anyone who's trying to represent their country should ever have to experience. That paints a really good picture. And you said you weren't sure how others were doing it, and I have to say that's way more common than not. And I think as someone who's been through the sport and found success, such as yourself, it's awesome to hear you still be able to speak to, hey, like it's not easy and there's a lot of work to do, because a lot of people I think probably have success and then never talk about like how hard it was. So thank you for sharing that. The next one we're going to hit is qualifying for the Olympic Games. So for those who don't know, there's a misconception that in rowing, you just show up at the Olympics and you're there, but rowing qualification works differently. So you qualify the boat, not the people. For you, what's it like knowing that you can help your team qualify, but still potentially not make that Olympic boat?
I think we can both agree that that's one of the worst case scenarios an athlete can go through. I haven't personally experienced that situation. I think the way I kind of always prepare for that possibility, and the only way I can reconcile with that possibility, is that I'm pretty much constantly reminding myself that at the end of the day, I don't want to be in the boat if I don't think that I am the best option. So this kind of approach takes a lot of, I think, personal honesty with yourself, and at the same time, a lot of intrinsic belief too. Both those things aren't really easy to do, but it's a fine balancing act of constantly kind of checking in with yourself. How am I doing? Holding yourself accountable, but then also being like, I know I can get to that spot. I know I can be the best person for the boat. And so it's really just like this juggling act of being super honest with yourself, but where you are compared to where you want to go, while also like maintaining that deeply rooted belief that you will be ready when the time comes. There was only one time I haven't actually like really made a crew, and it was for World Champs. I remember being like initially very devastated and felt a little embarrassed too. But I ended up having like the best possible summer of training, and it was actually exactly what I needed. I think it actually really set me up for success that following year. And I know there are situations also where people feel like they 100% did deserve to be in the boat, and due to politics or something, it ended up not working out for them. And I know this is a very different situation, but those kind of things are what I try to remind myself when I am training for something that I know could be taken away.
Yeah, that was a beautiful answer. And I think that speaks a lot to your character as well. Not everyone can sit there and say, if I'm not the best for the boat, then I shouldn't be in it. So
it takes a lot, right? Like,
yeah.
Even when I didn't make the boat that first time World Champs, I remember being very upset about it. But then I realized that I was like, I'm not on my top form right now. Mm-hmm. And so how would that impact me later down the road? And so it ended up being okay. But it's a lot easier said than done.
Thank you for that. We'll shift into Tokyo now. I'm sure you've spoken a lot about this, but I would like to ask just for you a little bit, just for your mindset and trying to get into where your head was at, especially for this past Olympic Games in Paris. You had such success in Tokyo, and then you decided to come back. Where was your head at? Did you frame that?
Yeah, so initially I came back with a very positive mindset. I had been in the best shape of my life in Tokyo, and I had been also performing very well technically, but then I'd also felt like there was so much uncovered potential within me. And, like as athletes, we all know that there's always like a little bit more, a little bit better you could be. So I felt that, and I was really, really excited to get back to work. I took a little bit of time away, and then I came back with this very positive mindset. I think because in my mind, it's like, we're a totally different crew, Like, I didn't know who was going to be in the boat. It's like the physical boat isn't even the same. It was a totally different scenario, different coach, different training location. Everything is totally different. So I kind of just like made an effort of separating myself as I was in the present compared to like what we had done in Tokyo, because I just like didn't really want to feel that pressure, I guess. And I think, at one of our first World Cups, I realized that I was carrying a bit of that stress, even though I had been trying not to. And so I had to kind of figure out ways to work through that and just, be like, all right, it's not me. That's a totally different crew and totally different person. And I was, as I said, going into this quadrennial, or this 3 years before the Olympics, with this like very much growth oriented mindset. But unfortunately, as things go in sport and in life, for me, there were a lot of unexpected challenges, and I found myself really struggling with my health a lot. And that really like trickled down into my confidence and my overall, like even enjoyment of the sport. At the same time, like our team was going through a lot of change, like as I mentioned, location, coaching, staff members, etc. And so I think that just also really contributed to a lot of unnecessary stress within our culture as a team. Looking back, I went into this cycle a little bit naive, and it was a lot more tough than I was expecting.
As a viewer, as an onlooker, you would just see the woman's 8 and think 8 equals 8. It's 8 people in a boat. But when you unpack it like that, like there's nothing about it that's the same. You're forging an entirely new path and your entirely new direction. So having that growth mindset, I mean, that must have, I don't want to speak for you, but that must have helped so much when you had all those injuries and changes. If you kept that mindset, it allowed you not to, woe is me, the past can't come with me, but excited about becoming who you're going to be next kind of thing. So that's
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it can be like a double-edged sword. Sometimes that optimism is really, really great because it can carry you out of some darker times, maybe. Growth mindset is always a good thing. I was going to say maybe going into it a bit naive.
No, I
wasn't the best, but the growth mindset is always so important, and it can take you out of a lot of really dark spaces.
No, I completely understand what you were just saying.
Yeah, I think I started thinking of positivity. I went in with this super positive outlook, and it was having a growth mindset that allowed me to overcome going in with too much of a positive mindset, and then feeling like the carpet was ripped out underneath me. It was actually the growth mindset that kept me being like, okay, you know what? It's not the best right now, but it's just little baby steps, like progress over perfection. We're just going to take one little step at a time. And I have belief that eventually I can get there. It might not be good right now, but I know later we can get there.
Wow, you got there. As a first-hand viewer, that's awesome to see and be able to like see that both in your story now and see it having happened. In 2021, there's you and your crew who had committed to this redefining excellence mantra, I guess you could say, because there were so many uncontrollable challenges, and redefining excellence is really what's accredited to you winning the gold. What event or what in specific do you think catalyzed this mindset shift, and how do you embody redefining excellence now and then in training, and how would you say it could translate to life?
We came up with this very bold commitment to redefining excellence motto, basically with a mental toughness consultant as a team as a whole. We had already gone through a bit of a tough situation involving a bike accident right before that. So we were feeling a little bit discombobulated because there had been some injuries and shifting of lineups and whatnot. So we did this mental toughness training together. And we essentially made this motto because of his suggestion that a motto could be essentially a promise to one another that we could hold ourselves accountable to. So he encouraged this. And so we all huddled together and we thought about it and we talked about it. And we essentially got to the point where redefining excellence was a promise to be our best selves, to always focus on the process, and to ultimately hold ourselves to that standard of excellence, regardless of what our competitors did. So you can be excellent regardless of whether your competitors beat you or you beat them. And then I think at the end of the day, it was highlighting the fact that you can only really control yourself. And we wanted to be able to row away from the finish line feeling really, really proud of our crew, regardless of that final finishing position. And I think that, you were asking how this translates to training in life. And I think it means to do whatever it takes to be your best. And I think that sometimes that means that you have to go against the flow, or you have to take a break, or you have to do like some absolute mad 40 times 500 meter training session that you just didn't think
Oh, yeah.
right? It depends on the situation, depends on the person. But whatever it is that you are doing, you're holding yourself to the standard that aligns with whatever values you have established. And so I think that at the end of the day, if you can meet those values that you are holding yourself accountable to, then that's excellent for you. That's what excellent is for you. So luckily for us, the focus we had on being our best possible selves and the best possible version of our team, it obviously paid off in a good way. It's not to say that we weren't also focused on doing whatever it took to win gold,
Yeah. No, yeah.
We had this, we're trying to be our best selves, but we still knew that if we didn't win gold, we could leave feeling really, really proud of how we had handled all and any of the challenges up to that point. I can confidently say that even if we hadn't got that, I was proud of what our team had done, and getting the gold was just that cherry on the top.
That's an athlete's dream, to be able to say, no matter the result, being able to say, we all committed to our best. And something that you said just now that I also just love was the definition of commitment to excellence that varies across the board. So there is the adaptability of one person needs one thing, one person needs the other. And then having that motto as a team and as a unit to give and take for the team, that's something that I think it takes a real confidence and commitment to be able to do as a unit and within each other. So, I mean, there you have it. That's how you won gold, because you had that.
I was going to say, you probably would know this quite well, like working so intimately with just one other person. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you guys are on the exact same training program all the time, doing the exact same thing, and one person's like, this is really not working for me, but you're like, but this is the established training program, and your partner's just absolutely suffering and they aren't progressing in a positive way, well, then this is just kind of pointless. We're not the strongest possible version as a team. We're not even one person's the best possible version of themselves and the other person's not. And so I think that's why it's super important on a team to be able to have the confidence and the expertise to be able to help people figure out how to be their own entity first before or in combination with a broader team.
Yeah, and trust, just so much trust. I mean, that's
holy moly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, they're not just slacking off.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing what's really, really important for them. And I would rather them do that than be a lesser version of themselves on race day.
Yes, love. Okay, shifting focus for a minute here. You shared that rowing once lost its joy and became overwhelming, yet you chose to stay, even as you walk away from skiing. What made you stay in rowing despite burnout or your sense of burnout? And was there a reason, or was it from the inside? Was it an Olympic medal or the fear of not being able to go back or going back?
When I was newer to rowing, I remember, and maybe newer as in newer to the national team. And so I was seeing these icons and these other higher performing women on the team. I remember kind of promising myself that if I ever started to feel like miserable and hating being at practice, then rowing wasn't worth it for me, and that I should quit before rowing became too tarnished for me. And that's separate than skiing. I quit skiing because I had a lot of fear of failure. I also wasn't really sure what my options were and how to progress beyond the high school kind of level where I have supportive parents. I kind of like made this promise to myself. But then actually being in the situation where I showed up to training like not in a good mood a lot of the time and not enjoying myself, I realized that I couldn't do that. And I think I realized I couldn't just quit. And I think I finally understood what the older women had been going through, because I think I had been kind of judgy. Like I was like, oh, you should just quit. Like I finally was in that situation and I was like, I can't do that. And I realized it wasn't rowing that was making me feel overwhelmed and without joy. It was my environment while I was rowing.
Right.
And it was also like those struggles with my health that I had mentioned. So I stayed because I knew that I still loved rowing, and I refused to give up on something that had really, at the end of the day, had enriched my life so much. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made to pick up the sport. And then I also stayed because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm super optimistic, maybe sometimes to a fault. And so I was like, you know what, this is something that it's tough right now, but I know that if I just give myself time and I reach out for help when I need it, and I problem solve and I communicate, that I can get past this. And, you know, I did get better. I went through a pretty rough year where I was like, I really am not liking this. But then there was a lot of changes in our environment, and I made a lot of changes, and I did this quadrennial quite happy.
To be able to sit back and separate the sport from the environment is so difficult, and it requires support. But even to be able to separate the two just for yourself, I mean, there's so much strength in that, because that's very, very challenging to do. So that's a testament to the sport. I'm glad it was there and kept you in, for sure. But
it's an addicting sport.
Can't get enough.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, you emphasize the importance. You said you're positive to default. I would argue that and just say it's who you are, and it's very well worked for you. So you emphasize the importance of fostering this positive and fun culture within rowing. Can you define fun in a high performance situation? And what does building that kind of meaningful culture you touched on earlier look like in practice? How does it support growth and success in the high pressure, high performance world of competitive sport?
I think we can both agree. Just put it on the table right now. Rowing is a super grueling sport, and it isn't always fun in the way that you just defined fun. No two ways about it.
It is not fun.
No. But as some background to myself, I was raised by parents that had me doing crazy 14-hour day hikes up like 2,000 meters of elevation, hiking these mountains at like age 5 in crazy snowstorms. And anytime my parents were like taking me on these hikes, I would complain and I would cry and I would refuse to start the hike. I would be like dragged out the door, and I just like would get super anxious about it. I didn't want to go. It sounded horrible. But then as soon as I was in the thick of it, I was truly having the most fun ever. I think my parents once said that one of the moments they realized that I could be a really good athlete was that I had been like struggling in this hike, and like, you know, they were struggling too. It was a long hike. But then as soon as we got to this like incredible rocky outcrop with these giant boulders and whatnot, I started like climbing around and like just exploring and having a lot of fun. And so I think having that kind of background and having those experiences, they really just taught me this, you know, super valuable lesson about finding fun in discomfort, and how really a slight shift in mindset can brighten a lot of really difficult situations. I struggle with a lot of anxiety. I always have, and it's gotten a lot better with age, but it's shown me how sometimes these situations can seem really overwhelming and really miserable and really tough. And that's not necessarily who I am. That's just something I struggle with. If I can separate the two, I can find joy even in these really shitty situations. And so then when you come to this highly competitive environment that you see in elite sports, I think in order to feel fulfilled beyond, like truly fulfilled, beyond just the actual final finishing performance, I think from my personal experience, I think you need to have those moments of laughter. I think you need to have those moments of bonding, joy, peace, whatever. And I think that when you're starting to do this, those moments can be like really, really difficult to find, but then it quickly becomes easier. And so I think that's something that I don't always do very well, but I try to keep doing. And in reality, like some of the times I've laughed the hardest in my life, I don't know if you would feel the same way, but those moments have been sitting in a rowing shell with my teammates. Usually we're like laughing at our exhaustion or how hilariously terrible the conditions are. But in my opinion, if the options are to cry or to laugh, like laughter is always the best choice. So I try to gravitate towards that. Ultimately, I think it's just like, you know, associating those monotonous daily repetitions of our sport with some kind of joy or fulfillment, it just makes that growth that we're trying to strive for so much easier. And I think that you're going to get people who are going to try to fight that, who think maybe that it's supposed to be miserable. But if you just keep focusing on yourself or taking those moments to have fun, it doesn't mean that you aren't being high performance. It sometimes just means that you're like enriching the experience of being focused, right? I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you answered it. You 100% answered it. You answered it in a very similar way you answered separating the environment from the sport. I think also being able to have fun is what kept you in the sport for so long as well, because you can't go as long as you have with just like the drudgery and the grim and the like it's going to beat you down. So I completely agree.
Well, I guess
you could.
It's just it's like, in my opinion, I'm like, man, 4 years is a long time. that's a big portion of your life. And I would way rather walk away being like, you know what, there were so many incredible memories. It's like the way to make your life feel longer is to like essentially every day have unique experiences so that each day feels different from the other. But if you are doing the same thing day in and day out, and you're never like spicing it up in some way, having something happen that was enjoyable, it just all seems like one day, so then your life feels shorter.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. You need those moments, and I mean, especially in a sport like, I don't know many sports that you don't have moments of why am I doing this? This is so hard. It's just being able to be like, this is ridiculous. We're all exhausted. Let's just laugh. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like the funniest things. Like, I'm freezing, the waves are crashing over my boat, I might drown. And I'm gonna look back on this, and it's kind of hilarious that we're all sitting in this giant bathtub together. Yeah. What a silly thing.
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, so we're gonna probably shift into a little bit more of like the racer, battlefield mindset. So you describe rowing as a religion and races as a battlefield, which reminds me of how performers like actresses and singers, they have their alter egos, right? Like they step into their alter ego when they go and perform. So how did you come up with those analogies? How do they shape your approach to competition and preparation? And how do the mental, physical, and emotional demands of rowing translate into lessons beyond the boat?
Okay, so first, as background, escaping into novels or books or whatever has always been like a huge outlet for me. And so I grew up on incredible fantasy books like Narnia, Harry Potter, whatever, all those ones that you know. And I think those stories really influenced me from a very young age to seek out magic or fantasy in my daily life. Like I desperately wanted to be a witch. And once I realized I couldn't be a witch,
love that for you.
Like, okay, well,
love that.
I'll do what I can to bring that into my daily life, my muggle life. I've been asked to describe like the seats that are in an 8 and describe who gets put in what seat. Eventually I started coming up with these fun little descriptors, including how like, rowing's like a battle, like we're all going to battle together. It's kind of exciting. And so I made all these little descriptors for all the seats in an 8. And sometimes I'd share those with like a teammate if they were struggling to find their role in a boat. And I thought it was just kind of like a fun little tangible way of thinking about a very complex thing, which is rowing. That was how those analogies originated for me. And then how they really shaped my approach to competition and preparation, how it became more than just a fun little story, was that it made and it makes rowing seem a little bit more like this exciting adventure. And I think it just like ties in to a broader theme of how I approach sport in general, which is that I read a bunch of fantasy adventure books as I was a younger kid. And I think that kind of like shaped me into the athlete that I am today. And that's because the best stories were always the one where the protagonist went through a lot of challenges. And those challenges, or in spite of those challenges, they displayed a ton of character growth. And, you didn't really want to read a story if there was no thrilling adventure or challenges that they had to overcome, right? It would be kind of just like, well, that was boring.
Yeah.
And so I think reading a lot of those books, it kind of caused me to view myself just as another protagonist, like I'm the main character. And then everyone is, right? I think everyone, you don't want to go too far. You're not a main character. You're just, someone else is the main character in their own story, but acknowledging that everyone's the main character in their own story allowed me to really, anytime I had these struggles, subconsciously, I think I just viewed it as another challenge to overcome that would ultimately be overcome and make my story interesting. And so, and of course, there's some things that are just really difficult and they probably can't be viewed in this light. But to some extent, it had this subtle internal influence on my mind that I've more lately been starting to recognize. And I think it also means that like sometimes I'll just like, not actually do this, but like metaphorically look at myself from above and like view myself as if I was a character in a book and think, would I find this character super frustrating to read about, like with all their decisions. And so I sometimes kind of like do that little thing. And it kind of encourages me, I think, to put my best self forward and to never give up and to just like, fight for what's right.
Like a little voice on your shoulder there being like, well, Avalon on page 5.
Yes, yeah, and be like, oh, that girl was super boring. She
Oh,
made a lot of mistakes. And then I think you were talking about how it went into life beyond the water.
yes.
Yeah,
Like,
and so you know what, as we've talked about a bunch, like the elite sporting world, it's this high stakes environment, but it is also one that I think gives countless opportunities to try and to fail, and then to try again, and then to maybe fail, and then to try again, and then to hopefully succeed. And I
mm,
think there are these endless lessons to be learned. I think failure is often actually, in good environments at least, is encouraged because, you know, it means you tried. Like I remember having people in the boat where it's like okay, I'm gonna try really hard. I'm gonna probably like put down a lot of watts off the start of this piece. I'm really sorry if I blow up. And we're all just like, you go for it.
yeah.
Like I would rather you do that, figure out your limit, and then adapt from there versus just like never try, because then you might be missing all this potential, right? So I think that in the right environment, that's encouraged. And then I also think that discomfort is really obviously encouraged. It's a requirement. Our coach always says how if you aren't uncomfortable, nothing's changing, right? Like if you're totally happy and comfortable, well, you're probably not making a change technically. And so again, yeah, discomfort is also very welcome in sport. And so with all these experiences of resilience and discomfort and growth and learning lessons and failure, how could you not go into the real world without valuable knowledge about resilience and success? You might not realize it. It might be like kind of subconscious, but I think we've learned a lot more than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson that even Manu and I with Daylilie right now, we don't know if it's going to work. We don't know if it'll be successful, but we're both going to go as hard and as fast as well, not as fast, as logically and smart when we go fast. But if it fails, it fails, but we're going to try. And I think that's something that you just put so eloquently was, you know, you'd rather have someone try 100% and fail than try 50% and never realize their potential. And that's all we can ask of ourselves. So thank you for sharing that, because it was like, check. And I think you're right. I think so many athletes go on into the real world and they don't appreciate just how comfortable they are with failure and with the ability to pick themselves back up and go. And it's something I have yet to see someone learn that without going through it. I don't think that's possible. So it's a good lesson.
Or also being, you said, picked apart by like criticism. That's a huge thing. I'm like, please. Like,
Yes.
my coach, and I'm like, tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me everything. That's unique as well. That's like an incredible asset.
Yes. Did you see that one stroke in the 25 kilometers that I was out there? Did you catch that?
Yeah.
What happened? Totally.
Give it to me straight.
That's a great perspective to have and strong. So we're going to talk about Jacob, your partner. On your lowest days, you've spoken about how Jacob, who's also a rower, was the constant in your life. They narrowly missed on Olympic qualification by 1/100th of a second. He poured his energy into keeping your dream alive while grieving his own after that, which is beautiful and which is something that, you know, you wish for others and for yourself. Honestly, how has this shaped your journey as an athlete, and what has it taught you about mutual support in partnerships, especially in the face of challenges such as this and personal sacrifices?
I was actually thinking about this kind of recently. I was thinking about how, you know, we have a pretty unique situation. You know, it's rare to be an Olympian. It's also rare to have a partner that is an Olympian. And then it's even more rare to be partners in a romantic sense, training for and competing at the same Olympic Games together, and going for 2 Olympics together as well. Like that's very special and very unique. And I was recently reflecting on that, where I was like, not that many people can say they've been in that situation. And so I think in many ways, I sometimes felt like, you know, not a lot of people necessarily fully understood what that experience was like. Because it's a really intense experience. Like you are not only fully invested in your own experience and your own success, but you're also extremely invested in someone else's. And so for me, our relationship, it really did shape my journey in many ways. Perhaps the biggest way is that, you know, in a positive way, it was that I had someone who completely understood my experience and was there to listen if I was struggling about something. But at the same time, it wasn't an actual teammate that I had to row with. I've talked to people where they could be like, oh, it's tough trying to tell someone outside of rowing about the struggles that they're having in rowing, right? Like that can be kind of difficult because you have to give so much background. But with Jacob, he was immediately on the same page. It's like no background needed. And so I felt really lucky that I had that kind of support system. Like that was really, really huge. I could share all this information. We could go to practice together, but then I didn't have to directly train with him. I didn't have to race against him or with him. Like that was super great. But then at the same time, it's double the stress, honestly. Like, as I said, I was super, super invested in my dream, but also really invested in Jacob's and in the entire men's 8. And I think because I had already had that like absolutely incredible experience of achieving my dream by winning gold at the Olympics, going into Paris, more than anything, I really, really, really wanted that for Jacob. And that's not to say that I didn't want it again too. But you know what, like when they didn't qualify, I think I was more devastated than if I had been the one who didn't qualify.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I mean, it's like everyone understands that, right? Like that's just like unconditional love, right? It's just a unique situation that we happen to be in this sport together. But anyone who's watching their loved one compete on that world stage, like they're feeling those emotions too. The only reason this isn't unique for me is because I'm also competing, so I have to shut that side off.
Yeah.
You know, and that was really tough at times because you want to be there for that person all the time. And I think like I also really wanted them to have that experience, but I also had to be like, you know what, I'm super invested in myself. I want this for my teammates as well. And so, yeah, that was really tough when they didn't qualify. But when we did win silver, I was trying to like think of it as in I was also winning that for him as well, and that he was very much part of that. But yeah, I think when I was on the podium and we were getting our medals, I was quite emotional, like, I mean, naturally, but I also was quite emotional because a huge part of me like really wanted to be in the stands, like watching him win that medal. And so that was like really, really tough. But at the end of the day, I think it like has taught me a lot about mutual support and partnerships. And it mainly taught me that, you know what, mutual support is like, it's incredibly special, but it also can be incredibly taxing, but it's also very beautiful. And then I'm very lucky. But at the end of the day, you know what, to be a really good partner, and the same with being a really good teammate, like you have to put your life vest on or your breathing apparatus on first.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the main lessons I really learned when we were both preparing for qualifiers. Was I was like, the best way I can help you is by being the best version of myself, by doing all the right things, and then we can feed off one another.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it definitely takes two very special people to be able to have that kind of relationship. Like, clearly you're both very in touch with yourselves, but with each other. The way you described it, I felt like a reaction to that. I'm so glad you're able to like be strong after and do it for him at the end of the day. But obviously it's hard to ignore the fact that you'd rather see him there as well. And it was really beautiful. And we will end the main interview portion on that, and we'll finish up with some like little fluffier questions, but still enjoyable, I would say. But thank you first and foremost. Thank you for sharing all of that. Honestly, Av, like that was so insightful, and I loved everything you said. I mean, I'm the first person to be like, I loved it, but that was very, very well said and well spoken, and just like who you are as a person. There's so many things people can take away from, not to try and be you, but, you know, be a little bit more like you, in the sense that there's so much power and strength in positivity. There's so much power and strength in enjoying the moments, and then kind of honoring who you were in your former life and how that's allowing you to be who you are in your current life. I think a lot of people kind of don't want to be who they were, or like, I'm, you know, new year, new me kind of stuff. And it seems to be that you're very much like, okay, and growing and growing and growing, and thank you, and growing. And I think there's way more strength in that than just kind of trying to walk away from who we were. So thank you so much. But yeah, fun stuff. So music sets the tone for the day. Right now, currently, what would you say are your 3 top songs right now that put you in the zone and get you ready to put your day on?
I'll tell you one song
One is
that
fine.
I recently discovered, and I'm not saying it's necessarily applicable to my life completely, but I think it's very applicable to a lot of women out there in the world. You've probably heard it, but it's called Labor by Paris Paloma.
No, I never heard.
And it's a banger. And it's basically just, talking about like unseen labor that women do.
Let's
And
go.
it's really, really good. I really like it. And so that's like the first thing I can really think of, like if I'm like in an angsty mood.
Yeah.
And I like sing it to myself. And like I a lot of the songs that like I listen to are just like really beautiful songs. I could listen to like a wide range, but like that's why I'm kind of like I don't really have like a Taylor Swift song. You know, I'm listening to like Night Call by Kavinsky. Yeah, so I can't think of anything right now. The Labor one is the one I'm thinking of right now.
Labor. No, we'll go with that, and we'll also say not everyone is a Swiftie, and everyone has different.
I also love Taylor Swift. I love songs that she has done.
What's the songs that she sings?
She sings one that I like.
That's good.
Don't tell Jill.
No. She'll be like, "Oh no, you like Lover." That's what she'll do. She'll be like, "Oh no, I know what you're talking about." Yeah. Okay, the next one is Daylilie, who we are. Is all about the moments that shape us. What's the one memory that you go to when you need a little bit of an extra push up?
I feel like this is like going back to like more serious stuff.
True.
I think I kind of like go to like an amalgamation of memories, like times that I've pushed through, you know, like it's just kind of like a mixture of memories, and those could be like from injury or sickness or burnout or whatever. And I think they just kind of like, as we've continuously talked about, they just remind me of how I've repeatedly shown that I can be resilient or bounce back from setbacks. But one specific memory I think about like fairly often was when I was diagnosed in 2020 with pretty severe case of mononucleosis, and was hospitalized and bedridden, couldn't get out of my bed and walk to the sink for a glass of water without taking a nap on the couch halfway. Wasn't able to even go for a walk for 4 months, and I felt really in the dumps about it. But that was, I think, kind of the birth of me being like, wow, I need to have a really great mindset about things, because like, if I have a great mindset about this, maybe I can like turn this around and I can use this to my advantage. I eventually realized that, I could take this opportunity that I was being given and being forced to take as just this opportunity to like really reset physically and mentally, and, determine my values, determine my vision, my why, to use Lululemon speak there, and, come back even better than I had before. And this was, under a year out from the Tokyo Olympics by the time I came back to training. And so I think I often use that memory as an example for myself, a reminder that just because something seems really impossible in the moment or seems really overwhelming, doesn't mean it can't be overcome, and that I can't, use it for my advantage.
Yeah. I mean, it does get into the more intense stuff, but at the same time, that's just who you are. That's awesome. What is one mantra that keeps you grounded?
I have a few. One that I feel like relates more to this question is I say 3 words to myself. I just say, yes, you can. And I just repeat that. I was saying it to myself as we were going down the course in Paris, racing for the medals. And I remember having those moments of doubt, those demons of doubt on my shoulder, you're in the pain cave, and just repeating like, yes, you can, yes, you can, yes, you can, yes, you can. And it's really simple. But I just like say that to myself a lot.
I love that. I will think of something else to say other than I love that at some point, not today. Yes, you can. That's like the lady with the bandana.
Rosie the Riveter.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
yes, you can. Okay, well then we'll end this with an inspiration. If you could name an athlete who's inspired you to step up on your own journey, who would you name and why?
I'm going to go with someone from my childhood, a childhood idol, or like maybe in my teens, I suppose is a better age to say. And her name is Therese Johaug. She's from the Norwegian cross-country ski team. She went to 3 Olympics. She has 4 gold medals, 6 total. And the reason she was really inspiring to me when I was quite young was that I remember reading an interview where she was talking about how her coaches, when she had been like a little kid, and like in Norway, they like learn to ski. Babies, everyone does it. It's a hugely competitive sport, right? So she was told at a very young age, or her parents were told when she was very young by her coach, that she didn't stand a chance. Like she wasn't going to go very far in skiing because she was going to be too small. So she was never going to be a successful cross-country skier. And, although I've never been short, I've always been tall. I think it was inspiring when I was, like a teenager, and I was like a really gangly, tall teenager in the sport of skiing. And it was really motivating to hear about someone who was told they could not do something and then did it anyways.
We love those stories. Okay, that is it for the interview. Thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, everything that you said was like way better than I could have ever hoped for. So thank you so much and the time. We will say good night and thank you now. Any last final words?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I feel like it has a lot of very insightful questions, and it was fun to dig deep and try to figure out answers for that. And so it was a very productive session even for me. So thank you.
I know for sure that people will get so much out of this conversation because I know I did.
Just like they'll get something out of the bras. I was thinking today how I just literally never wear bras. So I'm excited to try these out because I have hope. I have belief that it can change.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you, listener, for joining us on this episode of Daylilie Diaries with Avalon Wasteneys. I hope that you found her journey filled with grit, growth, and moments of laughter as inspiring as I did. If this conversation resonated with you, please subscribe to our podcast, share this episode with friends, and leave us a review. And don't forget, please follow Daylilie on Instagram. We are trying to grow and we need your help. Plus, if you do, there'll be more behind-the-scenes moments and updates. That being said, until next time, keep chasing those moments that shape you into your best self. See ya!